Welcome. I'm Glenn Anderson with the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation. This TV series explores a variety of issues that relate to peace, social justice, and nonviolent social change. For several years, the Western Washington Fellowship of Reconciliation's staff and volunteers have developed and carried out some creative and ambitious training for a select number of Puget Sound area teenagers for 4 weeks in July. Each peace activist trainee earns a stipend while developing knowledge and skills for working for peace, social justice, and nonviolence. 4 of our guests on this TV program are current peace activist trainees spending part of their summer learning about peace and justice issues and developing skills for working effectively on them. Our 5th guest, Kaylee Pruitt-Ham, is helping the Western Washington FOR conduct this year's Peace Activist trainee, and she herself was one of the Peace Activist trainees a few years ago. Our culture wants us to be afraid of Muslims, homeless people, immigrants, and young people. This program gives you an opportunity to meet 5 young people, and you can decide whether to fear them or to respect them, as I do, but don't decide for yourself until after you've had a chance to get to know them on this program. I'm happy to welcome our guests, Kaylee Pruitt-Ham, Eva Cosgrove, Solana Rolazalo, and Ari Kaufman, and Audrey Svitkovich. Good to have you all here. And let's start with you, Kaylee. Can you give us like a brief overview of what the Peace Activist Trainee Program is, what it does, and so forth?
Yes, thanks, Glenn. You explained well that the mission of the Peace Activist Trainee Program is to equip youth with kind of a toolkit of a range of skills that they can use in organizing social movements and being active politically in their communities and globally. And so we do facilitation training, nonviolence training, and we let them have theoretical as well as practical experience in many different areas of how to make social movements work.
And what benefits have you seen from your own participation as a Peace Activist trainee several years ago?
Well, I was an activist trainee when I was 15 in 2005, which was 6 years ago. So since then I've gone to college, and because of the activist training program in which we were challenged to create our own documentary about an issue that we cared about, we ended up creating a film and organizing discussion groups around the definition of terrorism. And this was around the time of the London bombing. And so then during college I got grants and went on to make films in Rwanda and Bosnia, and just because of the program, it got me into that career of filmmaking for community dialogue. And now I'm here back as a part of the staff, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, recycling yourself through the program. Very cool. Eva, can you tell us something about your own background in peace and justice?
Well, I think ever since I was little, I've always sort of felt for people that were hurting, if that doesn't sound too cheesy, but I've always sort of wanted to be active and help people when I can. I'm really interested in fair trade, and I have been when I learned about it in 5th grade. And so that's sort of one of my issues that I've been working on for a long time. In 5th grade, I did a big culminating project on it and presented to all my fellow classmates and parents. We had a whole night and wrote letters to Hershey's and Nestle's about the Ivory Coast and the slavery that happens in the industry. And so
in the chocolate industry.
Yeah.
And so what, can you just let the viewers know what fair trade means if they don't know what that is?
Yeah, fair trade is when the farmers that make the cocoa, that grow it and harvest it, get a fair living wage. A lot of times what happens, especially in the big corporations like Hershey's and Mars and Nestle's, the workers are have child slavery, or there's a lot of human trafficking going on and really horrific working conditions. So that's one thing that I've been invested in.
And you mentioned to me that you're a vegetarian?
Yeah.
And tell us why that would be.
Well, I really don't agree with how we treat our animals in the meat industry. I think there's a lot of cruelty going on there, and I don't want to support that. So I've been a vegetarian for about 4 years.
Great, thanks. Solana, how did you develop your concern for peace and justice?
I think the biggest inspiration for my concern for peace and social justice was mostly my upbringing, everyone around me, my family. I was raised by my grandparents. I spent a lot of time with them in my childhood, and they actually came to America as immigrants from the Philippines. And so hearing about all the political, social, racial injustices that they endured in their time coming here and even being here for so many years, that made me really passionate about injustices in our system. My family, my mom and my dad work in education. My mom works in minority affairs at University of Washington, and my dad works in Seattle Public Schools. So from them, I've learned a lot about the opportunity gaps in education for certain students. And someone I look up to a lot is my sister. She's an aspiring lawyer, possibly pursuing civil justice. So my family has been my biggest inspiration.
Great, thank you. And we'll be hearing more from each of you as we come back in the program and find out some more about your concerns. That's great. Ari Kaufman, what's your background and interests?
I would say my first interests were in environmental activism when I was small. I was very into nature and attended camps and learned as much as I could from books and from the internet and from my family, from my teachers. And I also attended anti-war rallies with my family and friends in 2003. And more recently, I've become more politically aware, especially about Israel and other issues in the Middle East.
Great, thanks. And Adriana, what are the roots of your concerns for peace and justice?
Similar to Solana, my family has had a really big impact on my values, and I was sort of raised on the golden rule that you should treat others the way that you want to be treated yourself. And another big influence was my godmother, who was the director of Peace Action Maine for a really long time, and I grew up during the summer going over and working with her, so they've all had a really big influence on my look on things.
Yeah, Peace Action is a great organization. It's the current name of the organizations that used to be called SANE, which is working on nuclear weapons, and the Nuclear Freeze Campaign merged with them, and they've been Peace Action for a number of years. They do wonderful work. So, great. Let's talk some more with each of you about the issues that you care about. Eva, you told us something about your background. There's some other issues and experiences you've had along the way also. Can you tell us some more?
Yeah, one of my other issues that I'm really invested in is also the environment, like Ari was saying. The summer before freshman year, 2 years ago, I went to Peru and with a youth group, and a lot of what we saw was barges coming downstream almost constantly, and they were just loaded with lots of logs from the forest, and so we were seeing deforestation right there, and
in
that was
the Amazon.
In the Amazon,
yeah.
And that was really sort of empowering and fueled me to go more with environment, because that's something I really care about.
And you organized a fair trade breakfast at your school. Tell us what that was.
Well, it was sort of an awareness thing that was going around the globe. It was a Friday back in June, and all around the world, people were having fair trade breakfasts where all the things that were being sold, or a lot of times they were just potlucks, all the ingredients were fair trade, and it was to spread awareness about fair trade and gain support.
Okay, thanks. So Lana, you told us something about your background, and tell us about some of your other efforts for peace and justice. I know you've been doing a lot.
Yeah. In the summer after my freshman year in high school, I was introduced to the Youth Ambassadors through a family member. And what Youth Ambassadors is a compilation of very diverse students from all around Seattle. They actually hosted Seeds of Compassion. And with them, I started doing, the first project I started was on this woman's house named Mama Jackson. She was a big part of the Central District community in Seattle. She had a kitchen, and she would feed anyone who couldn't afford food. And so for her, we repainted her house, and we installed a ramp so she could have easy access to her house, because it was getting harder for her to get up her porch. And the next project we worked on that summer was donating or kind of volunteering at Recovery Cafe, which is in downtown Seattle, and it's an open cafe for recovering addicts or people who don't have a home, and that was a really enlightening experience for me, and we actually helped them set up a new location, which was really great.
Mm-hmm. So very, very hands-on.
Yeah.
And satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
I guess. All right. What? Tell us some more about your peace and justice concerns and activities.
Recent activities have been. I've worked in soup kitchens and animal shelters and in food banks, and sorting foods, and done a lot of research about Israel, and in fact just a few weeks ago came back from a trip to Israel that I went on to learn about the situation from the people there.
What insights do you have that may be either fresh or reinforced?
Reinforced certainly the complexity of the situation. Our guide said, if you understand the situation, then you don't know what you're talking about. And it was completely true. There's so much variety in the people there, and their stories differ in ways that don't seem possible, and things that previously seemed conflicting that couldn't be true, or couldn't all be true, is. And it's a very different and more complicated place than I thought it was.
So how would those experiences and that complexity then shape, as you continue to work on peace and justice issues, how might that be influencing?
Well, now what I'm learning about the peace and justice from this training is really helping me understand some of the actions people are taking there and elsewhere, and helping me see it through a lens other than of a youth who attends his synagogue weekly and has little other access to knowledge before that.
Yeah. I'm sure if we were to do this conversation like 5 years from now, we'd have like a great resume of all kinds of additional things and more complexity and more firsthand experiences and more all kinds of stuff. Audrey, tell us some more about the issues and activities that concern you. And
So mostly right now I've been doing, similarly to my peers, a lot of environmental work through my school. I go to the Northwest School. I'd like to bring more peace and social justice issues to my school, but through this program I've learned a lot about how you can approach those things from a non-political way and more of a human way. And in my school we're not supposed to have like strong political groups, but I'd really like to get that started. But right now it's mostly environmental work and working on composting programs and starting gardens and teaching the 6th graders about why it matters to take care of the earth.
Yeah. What do you have insights about how you might do this in a way that's not overtly political, but comes at it in a different, humane way?
Well, we have a group right now about racial justice, and maybe I think I might start working with them and seeing if I could make a group that works with them and is more about how like youth around the world, especially in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, are all wanting peace, and we all have the same goals. And so bringing in youth around the world and how we can all get along, that kind of.
Yeah. One of our activities in Olympia, with the Olympia FOR, is working with Afghan youth peace volunteers. And you may have seen, have you seen any of their videos?
Just today, actually, we were talking with someone.
Okay.
We listened to them live. They have a days of listening with Afghan youth and Afghan activists, and then all around the world. Right.
Yeah. We through Skype, computer linkages, and phone and stuff. Yeah, we've had these wonderful conversations that typically run like a cycle of 24 hours, because we're 11 and a half hours off from their time zone in that part of Afghanistan. So. Let's find some more about the program then. Kaylee, tell us some more about Peace Activist. The 2011 program runs from July 5 to 28, and we're taping this like about a week before the program ends for 2011. Tell us some more about what you're trying to accomplish during this 4-week run.
As I said, we're trying to give them a wide variety of skills that can be very versatile for the different actions that they want to take in their own communities and schools, and together, I hope. But as you can see, the PATs, as we call them, we really they have a wide variety of issues that they are involved in, that they're passionate about. And one of the goals is to provide them with generic skills such as facilitation and how to build a campaign and how to use social media tools now. But we also wanted them to work together to create some kind of a direct action project that addresses an issue that they can all agree that they're passionate about. So that was, it's always a good challenge for the PATs to do that, and it was a challenge my year as well.
Right. I know every year they pick something different, and we'll talk in a few minutes. We'll talk about the one you chose for this year. So you're working on content, things about issues, and then working kind of the other dimension of skills that could be applied to any issue that somebody may work on, and that's all good stuff. And you told us some about your own experience having been in that, 5 years ago? Let's talk about some of the specific activities. Anybody here on the panel, what specific activities have been especially meaningful for you or interesting or...
Well, I just remember on the first day I kind of got the feel of the program when we were told to write a question that we wanted to ask the public on a piece of poster board that we had and held up, and then we were sent out into the neighborhood, Finney neighborhood, where we're located, and just to ask people on the street if they would like to answer our question and talk to them. We were working on listening to people and my question was about public transportation, and I actually, it was interesting what people were saying, and it was just a really good exercise. And I was nervous in the beginning to go out and talk to strangers, but it turned out, as many of the things we've been forced to do in this program, that in the end you realize that, oh, this isn't so easy, and people should be going out and talking and asking questions to people so much more.
Yeah, parents always raise their kids and say, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers. And how are we going to change anything unless we reach out to the public and talk with strangers? Exactly. So we actually have one of our vigil signs in Olympia says, talk with strangers. Because that's, otherwise it's like, oh no, I can't talk with that homeless person in the park or that person who looks different from me or whatever. And so you each devised a different question to ask. Mm-hmm. What was your question?
My question is, should there be religious states? Which I meant to say religious nations or something. I mean, in most of the world, I feel like people think of state as nation, but here we think of states as, there's 50 of them. So people confuse that, should Texas be run by the church? No.
Yeah. Which one of these is the Lutheran state? I want to move there, or something. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I got almost overwhelmingly no, except if everybody in that state followed that religion strictly. So.
What was your question? I'm just curious what each of your questions were.
I asked people's opinions about the gentrification happening in South Seattle and how they believed it was affecting our society and how it was affecting the diversity that Seattle so prides itself upon.
Okay.
And what was surprising to me is I asked a lot of older people, and they didn't know what I meant about gentrification.
The term gentrification.
Yeah, and we were in mostly North Seattle, so they didn't really know what I was referring to, but I live in South Seattle, so and my family has for 50 years, and so they have seen the neighborhood change, and a lot of people get pushed out of their homes.
Yeah. And what was your question?
My question was about global warming and the changes we need to make.
Okay. I just was curious what the range would be. That's great. What else have you found meaningful in this year's PAT activities? Meaningful or interesting or?
We got to talk to a revolutionary, Ivan Morovic, is that right? Who was involved in the Serbian revolution and toppled a dictator.
That was the nonviolent revolution. For the viewers who might not be able to keep their revolution straight.
And it was, sort of picked each other's brains about nonviolent strategies, and he's just overflowing, and that was sort of amazing.
Yeah.
Talk to him.
Yeah. What other experiences and activities have been meaningful this year?
I think the one that I have been dreading so much during this program was yesterday we actually got up on soapboxes in downtown Seattle and basically poured our hearts out in a 2 to 3 minute speech about some topic we were passionate about. We didn't have any set audience, it was just people, tourists walking by, but after it was done I felt very accomplished because we had all been very nervous, and it was something that we realized we could do and could make a difference by doing.
Yeah. Eva, is there anything else in the way of activities or experiences that?
I think one thing that we did that sort of gave me insight from other people's point of view is we went out into West Seattle, which is sort of like this big hubbub area, and we asked people questions about where their tax dollars were going, where they thought the biggest part of the U.S. budget was going, and where they would like it to go, and whether they think they have a say. And I sort of found that people really don't want to talk to you that much. They're all sort of like, oh, I'm really busy, But it was really interesting when people did talk to us. We found out a lot of information that people didn't feel like they had to say where their tax dollars go, and they didn't want them to be being spent on the war.
And we've got our Bring Our Billions Home campaign to stop the wars and reverse those budget priorities. And
Yeah.
There was actually a special activity that the PATs got to do this year. With their survey results, they interviewed about 150 people when they went to Westlake Center and asked people about the budget. And then what did you do with that information?
Well, with that information, only with a few days of preparation, we went in front of the city council, and we prepared a short speech, and we compiled all of our information. We put it into a very formal-looking pie chart, and we just presented about how the youth, we are the next taxpayers, and we need the money here for education, for Social Security, for healthcare, and it was a very positive experience. I know that it was a very unanimous decision, and that was probably one of the more friendly city council meetings that we could have attended. But it was nice to get our voice out there and to be appreciated, having the youth, fight for what we believed in.
And to see like people who are decision makers doing their job and watching them make decisions.
That was a resolution that Nick Licata drafted after the city, the Council of Mayors.
Right. The National Conference of Mayors at their national gathering in Baltimore earlier this summer passed a really strong resolution calling for an end to the war and shifting the budget priorities like what you're talking about to meet human needs. So when we were preparing on the telephone for this interview, you mentioned going to Tent City as well.
Oh, yes. Was it Tuesday? We visited Tent City. Found it much different than at least I expected. I thought it would be sort of a rough settlement. And I mean, there were, of course, tents, but it was very neatly organized, better managed than any neighborhood I've been in. And as a community, I think we could learn a lot from them. And I was very impressed.
Yeah, we have one tent city here, Camp Quixote, named after Don Quixote, this challenging, visionary kind of thing, and we did a TV program on that here, and they're very well managed. As a community, they want to make sure that their community works, and so they make sure that they have clarity about who can be living there and who not, and standards and stuff, and safety and stuff. So it's a great event. They're making progress trying to get more approval by the cities and the county to be more permanent and have a better place. Yeah.
Same influence, yeah.
So you've got a project this year that you showed. You mentioned like every year they do a special thing, and this year it's on water rights. One of your peace activist trainees this year, Lorelei, had proposed this, and you folks went for it. So what are you doing on the water issues?
We are going to show part of the movie Flow this coming July 25th, and lead some discussions on who water belongs to, who deserves it, who has the right to natural water sources, and bottling issues.
We're also doing a collaborative art piece where we're going to have people drawing on letters that are going to spell out the phrase, "Who deserves water?" Because we went to an art exhibit at El Centro de la Raza about Colombia and learned a bit about art in activism, and we wanted to incorporate that in our project. So we're having the different tables of guests just draw about what water means to them and how water is important, and then we're going to do some sort of direct educational action downtown to get people asking who deserves water, because it's about water rights and just how important water is.
Yeah, people, I think, in this part of the country don't realize how scarce and precious it is, because we think we got all this water, it comes out of the sky, it flows down the hills or the mountains and stuff. But it's pretty scarce, actually. And I know that one of the problems we've had in our Olympia area is water rights that, you want to build, say you want to build a bunch of houses and draw upon the water, and that water is already spoken for by other people. Other people have that, so how are you going to get the water? And so local jurisdictions and real estate developers and others are to some extent fighting over water. It sometimes isn't very apparent to most of us, but it's a scarce commodity. And then the issue like you're raising about who owns it, does that come from God, or does that come from some corporation that says, we own your water, now you have to pay us an arm and a leg to get it?
Well, most often it's the corporations.
And yeah, they had this problem in what was it, Cochabamba, Bolivia, where there's a Bechtel, big corporation, one of those big corporations, was the city had privatized the water and they were going to run it, and people rose up and kicked them out. So, I mean, these are things, urgencies in other parts of the world, even more so than here, especially when they privatize. So I don't want to do the talking, you folks are the guests, but I know it's a real issue with lots of implications. So what else are you doing with the water thing? You've been studying up on the facts? Because I saw, it was clear that you knew what I was talking about when I mentioned the case in Bolivia.
Yeah, I mean, we've watched at least part of the movie Flow ourselves. We had a speaker come in and tell us more about it, and watched other videos, and we've been trying to educate ourselves as best we can before the event.
Yeah, and then act on it by doing the event.
And then act on it both through educating other people and hopefully direct action approach.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we get the word out a little bit through the TV show here, just as another outreach method. Anything else you want to say about the water project or any of the other activities?
Well, one thing that we're going to be doing on that evening is having people sign the Article 31, which is getting water added to the Declaration of Human Rights, because water is a human right, but a lot of people don't have it as one.
Yeah, make it explicit as an actual, through the UN
Declaration.
Yes.
Yeah, very good, wow. Let's talk for a little bit about the Western Washington Fellowship of Reconciliation, which puts on the Peace Activist Trainee Program. And then we'll talk about the Abe Keller Peace Education Fund. Tell us something about Western Washington FOR or about FOR. Why don't we start with FOR generically and then bring it down to the Western Washington level. So tell us about this.
Well, I know that you could do it justice more than I could, Glenn, but I would be happy to talk about my perception of FOR and my journey as an FOR baby. I certainly was born into the organization because of my upbringing, luckily. But I know the organization, the British FOR, was founded and kind of its international roots grew in 1914 as an interfaith kind of network of people who wanted to organize at the grassroots level for stopping war, and it's been the fuel for a lot of different movements around the world. But it was actually this is a less known fact, but in the civil rights movement with the Freedom Rides, CORE started those Freedom Rides that were. But CORE actually came out of FOR.
The Congress of Racial Equality.
Yes, the Congress of Racial Equality was started by James Farmer, who's an FOR staffer. And so right now there's national FOR USA, which is based in New York, but they do a lot of projects around the world, such as delegations to Iran, delegations in Colombia. They had a program where that was called Drop Beats, Not Bombs. And they organized a lot of nonviolence trainings. But I think the biggest, most exciting part about the Peace Activist Training Program with Western Washington FOR is that we're making sure that the legacy of FOR is being passed on, because a lot of the active members that go to the annual and regional conference in CBEC are a different generation than the high schoolers.
Yes.
And so I think we really need to make sure that we're involving youth, and we have a lot to learn from the past generations who have been doing really cool things. So we're so fortunate to learn from people such as Mike and Ruth Yarrow and Ellen Finkelstein.
Right.
Those are the staff at WWFOR, Western Washington.
Right. Yeah, I joined when I was in my 20s, and I've just stayed active, but I had been active in the peace movement since the 60s and just never stopped. And the FOR was just closest to my sense of values and the multi-issue interconnections, you know, and then the roots in the ethics of nonviolence as the methods to use as well as the ends that we want to reach. So it was just a perfect fit for me. And we have an office in Seattle up on Finney Ridge, as somebody mentioned, the Finney neighborhood. And we keep plugging along and doing things. But it is, as you say, mostly middle-aged and older folks who are most active. And we continually need to bring in fresh folks for those who are getting too old to persist.
And it's been exciting to incorporate the Bring Our Billions Home campaign with the peace activist trainees going to the city council and supporting that cause.
Yeah, that's cool. Let's put in a plug for the foundation that contributes some of the money, much of the money for this effort, the Abe Keller Peace Education Fund. There certainly are expenses involved with running this program, and we have funding from this foundation that was set up by one of our FOR members in Seattle, who left money so that his work for peace education could continue after him. And I knew Abe. He was just so sweet and just incredibly funny and just passionate about peace education. He was an educator all his life, and especially was concerned about peace education besides teaching at the university level, but he really wanted peace education to persist, and so he created this foundation that now lives after him. And they do things that are local and have this kind of flavor to it. And they do some other things as well. But anyway, it's really cool to see Abe's effort continuing through this 501c3, which people could contribute to if they wanted, as they could contribute to Western Washington FOR if they wanted. So the Abe Keller Peace Education Fund doesn't do its own organizing, but they raise money and then put it into efforts like Western Washington FOR's Peace Activist Training. Anything else you want to say about
I mean, I'm glad that Abe Keller Peace Education Fund is around as a resource, but we definitely, just peace education in general, I think we need to build the schools of peace and build the schools of education and build the schools of healthcare and all of these things that are building peace instead of war. And I think that's what Bring Our Billions Home and everything is about right now.
Right. Anything else from...
Well, I just remember when I found this program, I was going to do it if I was getting paid or not, but then through the Abe Keller Peace Foundation, you know, it just made it so that we weren't forced to, I have to go and get a job right now because I need to be making money at this time in my life, but we could do something that we really did care about and be making money at the same time.
Yeah, you're not making big bucks, but,
no, but
it's a modest stipend, but it's better than
nothing.
Better than producing junk food at a local fast food place.
Exactly.
Let's talk for a bit about how the world looks from perspectives of young people. Not that you have to speak on behalf of all young people. I, say this, but just from your own. You all happen to be young folks. What insights do you have about the world that you're getting into? And
well, that's what all young people sound like, so we have to use that voice, though.
So, it's like speaking on behalf of all young people, speaking on behalf of the middle-aged community. Anyway, so what insights do you have?
One of the most, I guess it must have been this way, but often adults around us who are over 30 try to act as if they're a different species in a way.
Well, we are. That's the big secret, but you don't know that until
I know,
you get 30
at 28
or so.
we
then,
molt.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
But through this program, I've had definitely more adults than ever look at me in a light that's not as an uneducated young hooligan, and instead as a fellow person, a fellow. At least I will be a taxpayer, and they're paying taxes or not, or for whatever reason, and a fellow citizen of the country and more, and discovered that, whoa, they're not a different species, and they actually do act like us. I mean, we think like them, and they think like us, and we're not really separate.
Other insights or experiences? You all had good things to say on the phone when we were preparing for the program, so and you're not obligated to say the same stuff that you mentioned on the phone, but I know that you all have, these things are percolating.
I think coming into this program, as what Ari said, is that I've never been treated by adults as a youth. I've never felt so empowered. I never felt like my opinion mattered so much. And in this program, especially in the project that we are planning and putting on mostly on our own, I felt like they put a lot of responsibility in our hands because they know we can handle it, and we can work together and facilitate, and we can take on these issues that we are so passionate about. And I think that maybe this is just for me, but a lot of youth sometimes feel as though they're overlooked just because we're young doesn't mean we don't have opinions and we don't know things. Just because we haven't been on this earth as long doesn't mean that we are not just as passionate and we are not as aware as other people of what is going on.
I think that as youth also, especially at our age, we're kind of right at that time where we've seen plenty of things that we are ready and passionate, and we haven't done so much that we aren't going through the motions or anything, so we're just ready to go out and find things that we want to do, and that makes the world look really exciting and big, and things are possible for us right now.
I got that kind of impression from each of the phone calls I had with you, and the individual phone calls we did. It was like you're all charged up, and you know that you can do it, and you know things need to get fixed, and you're eager to get from here to there. I mean, I got that same kind of energy, that charged up sense from each of you on the phone.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like part of this training is really sort of like laying the bricks in the road for us to move forward from here to there.
And I think a lot of the reason why some young people aren't, looking into peace and social justice is because they aren't aware of a lot of these issues that I'm sure if they had known about them, that they would be very, very passionate about, because through this program, my eyes have been opened so much. I may have had some experience in peace and social justice work in the past, but nothing near as what I've learned being in this program even after 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's such a short time, and yet you're all saying such positive things like you've moved so much in that just few week time.
Yeah, it's been a pretty amazing program. We've learned a lot.
So it's like, how do we get from here to there, knowing that there's a long distance between here and there, but if that learning process and the growth in your good insights and skills continues, we can make some progress. I want to see if there's anything from our notes that would. You're covering all the things I was hoping we'd cover, which is really good. Are there other insights about getting from here to there? You got to say something.
I just I consider myself a peer with them, although I am in a leadership position with this program, but I am 21, just out of college, and what I'm excited about with this program and with this organization this year is that I'm really seeing more than ever the power of communication across borders with other youth and with other people from across generations. But it's been so exciting to be able to Skype with someone who is in Belgrade who has actually overthrown a dictator nonviolently, and to Skype, we will be Skyping with someone who lives in Gaza.
Yeah, and that's a communication,
Yeah.
a computer-based
And it may
communication
seem
thing.
it may seem to people who don't use Facebook and everything that it's not like a true connection, so it's not real. But at least it's something. And I hope that our generation is going to be another step towards normalizing nonviolence and thinking of ourselves as global citizens and thinking of ourselves as people that we can interact and know that, oh my gosh, I don't want to bomb Iraq because my friend lives there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that idea of normalizing peace would be a big shift, because the culture now for however many thousands of years has been where war is normalized. That's how you get things done, is you go out and you bomb them, or you invade them, or whatever. You overthrow somebody's government, you torture people, you whatever. It's like if that's the normal way of doing things, then normalizing peace would be a whole different set of opportunities.
I think in looking at our water as a human right, that our whole project, we can go to our sink at any time and turn on the water and not see an issue. We can't even fathom not having access to water, and I think a lot of people can overlook these issues because they don't feel as though they directly influence our lives. But like Kaylee said, we need to look at ourselves as global citizens, and I think making those connections across borders is a really important in becoming more active in looking at issues all around the world.
What insights or recommendations would you have about how younger folks and older folks could work together to make the world a better place?
I think when people work together, especially across generations and across cultures, I think the more diversity you have, the more people you have banded together supporting the people working together, and the more tight-knit community you'll have and the more change you can create. So I think as much diversity as you can find with young and old, everyone has different skills, and if you bring them together, it works a lot better.
Because then you have a broad base and not a narrow base.
Yeah.
It's just more
stable.
More stable, yeah. Very good.
I feel like we don't really want it to be a passing the baton to the next generation. More like we're all going to be running together, trying to get somewhere good, because I feel like, especially in this program, there's just been sort of the younger people are looking up to these older activists who have done so much and going, oh my gosh, look at, this is possible, we can do this, there are amazing people right here. And then they look at us and go, thank goodness. There are some people that care and that are going to make a change in the future. And so we're both supporting each other and trying to work together. And I think that's really necessary.
And getting away from that passing the baton metaphor is important, because what that does, the passing the baton, means that us old farts can just quit.
Yeah.
I can just walk away from it. And I don't want to do that. I want to quit. I want to keep at it. But if it's the collaboration, that's powerful.
I had the opportunity to be trained so that I could train in nonviolence here with the Kingian nonviolence folks at the Center for Nonviolence and Peace at the University of Rhode Island, and Bernard Lafayette, who is a civil rights leader, trained us, and I heard it was not passing the baton, it's lighting the torch. So both, all the torches are still lit.
Bernard Lafayette did such great stuff. There's this big, thick book called The Children about the civil rights movement, specifically in Memphis, in having to do with sit-ins, and then many of the people went on to do voter rights efforts. Fascinating and well-written book, and Bernard Lafayette is in there very much, along with James Lawson, who I know well. And anyway, so what else do we have in the way of insights or recommendations for collaborating across generations? Are there other things?
Well, that new metaphor for me, it's lighting the torch, not passing the baton, is stuck in my head now. But I think not only is that lighting the torch, it doesn't mean that the older generations get to rest once we have the baton, but that means that, I guess, it has put in the youth's head that we don't have to worry about it until the baton is passed to us. And I think what if more youth take into consideration that it's not going to be one generation taking responsibility then the next, it's all of us working together, then we will, we will become more passionate and we will make more of a change.
Any of you have other thoughts about moving into the future, whether it's across generations or just other insights about moving ahead?
I think one of the big issues for both, for people of all ages, is censoring themselves within their own generation. And I mean, I know when me and my friends are around my parents, we'll act differently than when we're not. And I know, from falling asleep in my bed and, hearing my parents and their friends talk in the living room, that they don't talk the same way either when we're around. And I think that if people of different generations and ages are going to make progress, there needs to be more opening and less censoring and more just overall relaxation and openness.
Okay. I appreciate all these insights. Can we pick up anything else? Anything else from anybody along this line, and then we'll wrap this thing up. So.
At the CBEC conference for the annual regional conference, we had a wonderful guest speaker who's 18 years old, Rachel McDermott, and she gave a presentation on how to engage youth, either if you're a fellow youth or if you're from another generation. And I think the main message that I got out of that is everyone likes to have fun, and so creating events that have food and music and build community across generations, that can make movements really catchy for all people.
Yeah. Great. Well, I want to thank all of our guests, Kaylee Pruitt-Ham and Eva Cosgrove and Solana Rolazzo. That's a difficult one. Ari Kaufman and Adriana Svitkovich. And I want to thank all the folks who've been watching. People on Earth keep polarizing our differences. We oppose each other with our different nationalities, our different races, our different religions, our different economic classes, and our different ages. But we all breathe the same atmosphere and we share the same water as it recycles from clouds to rivers to aquifers and our own consumption of the water out to the oceans and back around through the cycle again. So we really are all in this together, and each of us has to be part of that solution. We should make sure that we always include young people as equals and as respected participants in analyzing the problems and in devising the solutions. We have to work specifically to increase young people's abilities to help all of us make progress. And I'm glad that the Western Washington Fellowship of Reconciliation and the Abe Keller Peace Education Fund are helping to do this. You can get information about a wide variety of additional issues that relate to peace, social justice, and nonviolence by contacting the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation at 360-491-9093 or www.olympiafor.org. If you happen to be watching this program on TCTV on a Thursday night, stay tuned for our documentary series, The Big Picture, which starts at 10 p.m. This month we're showing the feature film Salt of the Earth. It's a powerful drama produced in 1953 by people who were blacklisted from working in Hollywood because of the McCarthy era's fear and intolerance of people on the left. Salt of the Earth is based closely on real events. It was a 15-month successful strike by workers in a zinc mine in New Mexico. Most of the film's characters were portrayed by the actual people who had participated in the strike action, and it's especially powerful because of the labor union's alliance of Latinos and Anglos working together, and because of the powerful role that women played in that action. Wikipedia has information about it, and the Timberland Library has several copies of that film. We're all one human family. We all share one planet. We can create a better world, but we all have to work at it, and the world needs what you have to offer. Thanks.
Then I've gone to college, and because of the activist training program, in which we were challenged to create our own documentary about an issue that we cared about, we ended up creating a film and organizing discussion groups around the definition of terrorism. And this was around the time of the London bombing. And so then during college, I got grants and went on to make films in Rwanda and Bosnia, and just because of the program, it got me into that career of filmmaking for community dialogue. And now I'm here back as a part of the staff, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, recycling yourself through the program. Very cool. Eva, can you tell us something about your own background in peace and justice?
Well, I think ever since I was little, I've always sort of felt for people that were hurting, if that doesn't sound too cheesy, but I've always sort of wanted to be active and help.
Let's start with you, Kaylee. Can you give us like a brief overview of what the Peace Activist Trainee Program is, what it does, and so forth?
Yes, thanks, Glenn. You explained well that the mission of the Peace Activist Trainee Program is to equip youth with kind of a toolkit of a range of skills that they can use in organizing social movements and being active politically in their communities and globally. And so we do facilitation training, nonviolence training, and we let them have theoretical as well as practical experience in many different areas of how to make social movements work.
And what benefits have you seen from your own participation as a Peace Activist Trainee several years ago?
Well, I was an activist trainee when I was 15 in 2005, which was 6 years ago. So since
Welcome. I'm Glenn Anderson with the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation. This TV series explores a variety of issues that relate to peace, social justice, and nonviolent social change. For several years, the Western Washington Fellowship of Reconciliation's staff and volunteers have developed and carried out some creative and ambitious training for a select number of Puget Sound area teenagers for 4 weeks in July. Each peace activist trainee earns a stipend while developing knowledge and skills for working for peace, social justice, and nonviolence. 4 of our guests on this TV program are current peace activist trainees spending part of their summer learning about peace and justice issues and developing skills for working effectively on them. Our 5th guest, Kaylee Pruitt-Ham, is helping the Western Washington FOR conduct this year's Peace Activist trainee, and she herself was one of the Peace Activist trainees a few years ago. Our culture wants us to be afraid of Muslims, homeless people, immigrants, and young people. This program gives you an opportunity to meet 5 young people, and you can decide whether to fear them or to respect them, as I do, but don't decide for yourself until after you've had a chance to get to know them on this program. I'm happy to welcome our guests, Kaylee Pruitt-Ham, Eva Cosgrove, Solana Rolazalo, and Ari Kaufman, and Audrey Svitkovich. Good to have you all here. And